Greetings to my fellow piece blunderers, and today I'm showing you why pushing your pawns forward may not always be the best idea, how you can get punished for doing so, and generally speaking, why doing so sometimes should be avoided. Now, don't get me wrong, there is nothing inherently bad about pushing pawns. Of course, we want to push pawns forward. We want to control more and more squares in the opponent's half and just basically getting them closer to promotion if possible. However, there are many cases when pushing a pawn is actually more beneficial to your opponent rather than to yourself, and we are going to take a look at a few of those. For example, in this position, this is a real game that I played, as you can see, against an opponent who is 2100, so it's not a gimme to win against the 2100. We can see that my pieces are all over my opponent's camp. I have very good bishops and very good knights. And there are lots of threats hanging in the air. For example, the f4 pawn is attacked twice. We also have this pawn attacked twice, albeit this pawn is for now sufficiently defended by the bishop and the knight. And it is in positions like this one when sometimes the defending side just snaps. When your opponent has a lot of attacking pieces in your own half, these are again some really good pieces, it's not uncommon for people to try and get those pieces away. And usually we do that with pushing a pawn forward and attacking those pieces with the pawn. And that's what my opponent did with c3 in this position. Apart from the obvious idea of attacking my b4 knight, which is quite annoying for my opponent, obviously. Also, it has a secondary idea of getting that c2 pawn away from c2 to c3, where it's of course much safer. However, the problem with this move becomes very apparent when I play the obvious, most of you would have played it anyway, knight d3. And this is just a freeze frame of the biggest problem about pushing pawns in a nutshell. Yes, when we push pawns, we tend to take control over the squares further up the board. However, there is a big downside to that. When we push a pawn forward, we lose control over the squares that we had before. On top of that, whenever we lose control over these kind of squares in this kind of fashion, we tend to lose it forever. Because pawns don't move backwards. Pawn moves are very committal moves. So whenever you move a pawn forward, think about what you are leaving behind, right? So in this case, the d3 square will never, ever, ever again be controlled by a pawn, because the c pawn is past that square and the e pawn is past that square. The only way we can somehow sometimes regain control over such squares is that if you have a double pawn structure. So you push one pawn forward and the pawn that used to be behind it at some point replaces that pawn. And now this position is just unplayable because white conceded the control over the d3 square, and because my knight so conveniently jumped onto it, this position is already -3 for black. This knight in conjunction with all the other pieces is just too strong. Whereas if we come back, this position is just about better for black. It's about -0.6, 0.7. Yes, it's better for black due to superior piece positioning, but it's nothing drastic. It is recommended to get rid of this annoying b4 knight, but in another way. Just take it with the bishop. Bishop takes b4. And when the knight retakes, of course the knight was defended, there is a very interesting counterattacking opportunity there, trying to disorganize and dismantle my piece structure a little bit with knight to h4. You see how it attacks my bishop there. Bishop to e4 is undesirable, because if bishop does go there, this is immediately winning for white striking my bishops at the same time. Also, a good footnote, don't put your bishops on the same horizontal or on the same vertical. You can do that, but you've got to watch out. Sometimes they can be forked in this sort of fashion and it's never pleasant. So the bishop would rather go back to g6, and now white can push forward with f5, e takes f5, knight takes f5, attacking the g7 pawn and the e3 bishop at the same time, and now the bishop is forced to retreat to h6 to defend both. And yeah, this is considered, again, slightly better for black still, but you can clearly see the difference. There is no monster knight on d3, and if white so wishes at some point can capture this bishop as well. All I'm trying to say is sometimes your opponent's pieces may look menacing, but it doesn't mean that they're automatically winning. And you can always find ways of dismantling their position a little bit, and it doesn't have to be pushing the pawns forward. This can be, in fact, quite dangerous. Another position that I'd like to show you now is not so much about the control over some squares, but more so about pawn structures. You see, the pawn structure becomes more and more important as we are approaching the endgame. At the beginning of the game and at the middle game, the pawn structures are still important, but not as much. You can get away with double isolated pawns and stuff like that. It doesn't really matter as long as some stuff is happening. Maybe you're mating your opponent's king. Who cares if you've got double isolated pawns? However, in the endgames, it's a different story. Here we've got another game played by me. I've got an extra pawn, and I've got a very nice passed pawn on the h-file, and we have a rook behind it. The position looks great, and I am winning. However, my opponent's next move confused me quite a lot, because this is a move that I would have never considered, and this is a move that, should clearly be a mistake. And this is, as you may have guessed, pushing the pawn forward with f5. Now, you could argue that this position is winning for white anyway, and I guess I would agree, but this move just makes my job a lot easier, because as soon as f5 gets played, I can exchange my e-pawn for my opponent's f-pawn, which in turn would mean that I no longer have a passed pawn on the h-file anymore. I have now two passed pawns, and they're connected as well. After e takes f and rook takes f5, look at this. I've got the g-pawn, I've got the h-pawn, and they're just marching forward. All I need to do is to put the rook behind that pawn as well and just promote. Now, if we go back for a second, maybe the reason why f5 was played was that my opponent wanted to get rid of that weakness on f7. That pawn is relatively weak because it's on a light square, which is attacked by my bishop, and then also a rook can come in and attack it some more. I guess to some degree that justifies that, but generally speaking, please remember that sometimes when you push your pawns and when you attack your opponent's pawns and some pawns get exchanged, see the changes in the pawn structure that are about to happen. As it stands right now, I have only one passed pawn. This is not a passed pawn. After this happens, I have now two. Also, a little disclaimer, I intentionally made this video a little bit shorter than my average ones, and I'd like to get you guys' feedback. Please let me know if you'd like more shorter videos where I explain problems like these ones in a more concise manner. I'd really like to know. And yeah, if you just so happened to find this video useful, please like and subscribe. Follow me on Twitch. I stream Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays. Find me on chess.com. Join our Discord. All that good stuff. And I'm going to talk to you very soon. My favorite unintentional game it is. Love you all. See ya in the next one.